We're going to start the Education and Neighborhoods Committee. It's Tuesday, April 16th. And so we're not aware of whether other committee members are going to be here, but we're going to move forward. On the first item, which we don't have a CF number, we thought it would be important to, let me ask the clerk to go ahead and say what that item is, then I'll comment.
Okay. Item number 1 is a discussion item relative to a request to the neighborhood councils to report on the status of their involvement in and understanding and awareness of the city's consideration of all current alternatives and proposals to meet the city's budgetary challenges pursuant to Charter Section 909.
Thank you. And also, for those who have not come to this committee, just want to make sure you know that put out cards if you have a specific item, or if you just want to comment on public comment on issues that are within the purview of this committee but are not on the agenda. So we want to make sure that you're aware of that. But we thought we'd put on item number 1 because we have a charter responsibility under Section 909 to make the city budgetary process open to the neighborhood councils. And I realize that many neighborhood councils have depend on the budget advocates. But on the other hand, what we were attempting to do is give a broader range of insight and input so that you could get this information flowing. I'm going to ask our city clerk over here now, if we get material that they present us, do we have the ability to ask for a CF number, or how do we get this into the mix so their input is part of the budget process?
Any items that would be submitted would have to be transmitted to the city clerk, and then we could input those for whichever with the appropriate council file.
Okay. Now, one thing, we put together a motion that we actually asked for that item to come here so the E&N committee could have this discussion, and for whatever reason it went to Budget and Finance. So we just need to figure out how they not waste their time and present material to us and it not get into the budget discussion as community comments or whatever the term we use.
Whichever documents are submitted into the record for the committee, those pardon me, those items should reference the appropriate council file under which your motion has been filed.
All right. So, Lorenzo, if you make sure we got that CF number before we go. Okay, why don't we start with item 1. We have 2 cards, and we have Gracie Liu, our general manager, and Jay Handel. Why don't you come up? In fact, Jay, why don't you start? If we got anybody else wants to speak on item 1? Yeah, come up. And also, you know, if you've been here before, we don't hold you to that death grip on 2 minutes. We let you speak. But if we get up and tear the page off the calendar, you've talked too long. So, all right. So, Jay, why don't you start?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jay Handel, the co-chair of the Neighborhood Budget Advocates 2013. I'm very pleased today to bring to this committee the official copy of what we call the Angelino's Recipe for Success. And what it is it's the Budget Advocates document that outlines the points that we have seen as the most important, the most succinct points for the city to look at to help balance the budget, increase revenues, reduce expenses, become more efficient, and help certain departments as well become more efficient, thereby making it a better system for all of us. There are 23 points in there that you can see. They range anywhere from healthcare, salaries, pensions, to revenue increases by the fire department's billings. Just to give you a quick overview, I know we always come in and we always scream, pay more for pensions, pay more for health care, but we wanted to look at all aspects. And one of the really good items that Dr. Dan Weissman came up with, he took a look at the billings for paramedic use in the last year and compared it to how...
What number is that?
12, thank you.
Page 7.
Basically what he did was he took last year's billings and compared them to how San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, how these other cities bill and what they bill for. And what it came out to, quite frankly, was the city would generate upwards of $110 to $150 million in additional revenue if we only billed the same things we billed but the way other cities did it. So, we were looking to find ways that we could be more efficient, and also be more compatible with what other major cities are doing in their billing process. Yesterday at Budget and Finance, I spoke about the need for the city to combine and have a single collection service so that all accounts payables, all accounts receivables are in one area, so that the Office of Finance would actually know what's owed to the city and it wouldn't go stale. Our recommendation last year was actually taken, and yesterday they approved contracts for reducing the time that people have in collection agencies. We don't believe they reduced it enough, but certainly going from 20-some-odd months to 15 months is better, but not optimum. So we're happy that we're not wasting our time. We believe that we are being heard. I want to make that very clear. In the last 3 years, through yourself and Councilman Rosendahl and Councilman Krikorian, we've been very fortunate to be heard at Council, at Budget and Finance, at E&N, and we hope that in reading this report, you will note that there are recommendations for increases, there are recommendations for expense decreases, and more important, speaking on behalf and being very parochial for a minute for our department, which you have, your commission oversees, is the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. As you know, the Budget Advocates filed with the city attorney an allegation that the city has been violating Charter Section 911 in underfunding the department, and we spelled out very clearly those issues that are in the plan and in the ordinance that the department can no longer fulfill as part of its mandate. That by itself shows that there is, in fact, a violation of Charter 911, and our hope today is to say to your group, and to you in particular, since you are the group, that we believe that the department should be fully funded to be able to fulfill its mandate to the departments, to the neighborhood councils, because the more we're able to do, as neighborhood councils, the more we're able to fill in the blanks around the city. And at the same time, avoiding any more cuts to the neighborhood councils so that we can fulfill our mission and ensure that that which we have gone out and planned to do could be taken care of. So, in that respect, yes, we're very parochial, Councilman, but we do fully believe that the department's been decimated and the number of personnel will not be able to handle the neighborhood councils, and quite frankly hasn't been able to handle the neighborhood councils the way they should be and are mandated. And even our C4C program, our bylaws task force, all of these volunteer programs that we've put together to help work with the city still aren't enough to really make it work the way it should work. So we would implore you, when we get the gloves tied and we're ready to get in the ring on budget, we would certainly implore you to go to bat for us to ensure that the additional monies that we need for the department in particular are done, and certainly for the neighborhood councils themselves. I thank you, and hopefully you'll read the report, get it in the file, and bring us back if you have questions on it.
Well, thank you very much. We will read the report, and we'll make sure that it becomes a part of the council file so that it can be referenced. And this is what I think is also important, is that the more people that get their input in, the more that the council should be, balancing those thoughts. And I think that regardless of how the budget looks when it's published in the next week or so, the new administration will come in and you'll probably see some very different views of priorities. And so I think, as we've done in the past, even more so this year, you'll have all year-round budgeting. And if the funding does not come in as expected, you're going to have almost budgeting by day and week, because that's how critical things are.
And for the record, to give you great credit, in the past you've really pushed the neighborhood councils to get active in giving input, and I can tell you with new leadership at Lank and the ability to get the word out now through the new system that's been put in with the department with the various emails, we have information going out on a weekly basis besides the department's e-blast, and we're getting, as we actually draft templates for council information file submissions, we're getting a lot of great feedback from neighborhood councils saying, this is a real help for us, and we're going to submit this to this council file and that council file. So that's to your credit, because we felt your foot on our back, and we definitely realized that it was time for everyone to step up a little bit. So thank you.
Let me tell you what, I wanted to give the credit to Gracie, because she's done more in the short time that she's been an interim and a general manager than all the time I sat here with the prior general manager. And so it goes on her shoulders. We may have had some ideas, but she actually made them work. And so I'm just appreciative of what.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you? Oh, okay.
Or do you want me to go?
Oh, I was just going
Yeah,
to...
let him go, because he'll interrupt you.
Okay.
You say-
No problem.
I just want to comment on item 23.
Okay.
My name is Jack Humphreyville. I'm with the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council. And over the last several years, we've heard the mayor preach about making tough choices and so that the city can live within its means. We obviously agree with that. But we know it's not an easy task for everyone, as everybody's competing for scarce resources, especially as the city faces a structural deficit every year. But I think we've developed a way. We believe that the mayor and the city council can place on the ballot a live within its means charter amendment that requires the city to develop and adhere to a 5-year financial plan, to pass 2-year balanced budgets based on generally accepted accounting principles. That means no banking of police overtime and deferring, civilian raises. And over the next 10 to 15 years to fully fund the city's 2 severely underfunded pension plans and to fix our streets, our sidewalks, our curbs, and the rest of the infrastructure. The charter amendment is very simple. There are no spending or tax limitations. None of that stuff that we've seen from Sacramento trying to, starve the beast, if you will. If you want to increase spending, be my guest. If you want to cut taxes, be my guest. If you want to raise taxes, be my guest. All you have to do is balance the damn budget. That's it. Just balance the budget according to general accepted accounting principles. There are no allocation of revenues other than the city has to address the ever-growing unfunded pension liabilities and the deferred maintenance budget, both of which are the equivalent of very, very high-cost debt, 7.75% for the pensions and probably 10 to 15% for the deferred maintenance when you start figuring out the deterioration, take into effect the deterioration of the roads. Personally, I think a live within its means ballot measure would win in a landslide. 70% of the people in San Jose, not necessarily a right-wing place, voted for it, and 67% of the people in San Diego voted for pension reform. And it would also go a long way in convincing voters that the city is serious about budget reform. And I would say to you, without budget reform, the odds of the city increasing taxes are slim to none. We just saw Prop A go down by 55% of the voters rejecting it, despite a slush fund of about $1.5 million campaigning against it. We look forward to joining you on the steps of City Hall when you announce this physically sane charter amendment. Thank you.
Great. One thing we'll make sure everybody's aware, I think we have handouts that tells you what the budget scheduling is for those who are interested in showing up when budget finance starts. So we should have those handouts so that you can take them with you and set your schedules where if you're interested in showing up to those meetings or share them with your neighborhood council. And I think, Gracie, you put it on your last e-blast so the people are aware of it. Okay? Gracie.
Gracie Liu, General Manager for the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. Good afternoon, Council Member and Neighborhood Council Board members. I thank you so much for your compliments. I really appreciate the thoughts, and I want to thank our staff and Neighborhood Council Board members for really stepping up and assisting us in all these past months, and as well as you, Council Member, for really guiding us along this new exciting journey that the neighborhood councils are going on. I just wanted to briefly let you know that other neighborhood councils are weighing in on the budget. It's not just the budget advocates, thanks to the LANC and the VANC and the other alliances. neighbor councils are trying to get the budgets, their opinions on the budget, on their agendas, and to provide feedback. So I did provide a small packet to the city clerk to show to you some of the examples, and these are not all of them, because some of them actually go directly to you and the mayor and the other council members, and sometimes we don't see them ourselves. But I think that your recommendation to put a council file to this item, it would be very helpful, because I do get calls from neighbor councils asking specifically, is there a council file number that we should be referencing, so it doesn't get lost in all the paperwork.
Let me just ask the question, would it be, the motion that we put forward, would that be the best council file number? But we said we wanted to ask neighbor councils to come in and bring information, because I think it is important, as Gracie communicates back and forth with the neighborhood councils, that they are given, we're trying to make them realize that there is a way in which their voice is heard, and we want to be consistent by giving them a number to reference.
Yes, whichever documents that are submitted into the record by the neighborhood councils, they can reference your motion, which I believe the council file number is 13-0355.
Let me have that again.
13-0355.
So if we use that as your reference and all of us, then anything that comes in, we know it's gathered in one place and people, it will be a part of the official record.
So for all the neighbor councils who have already weighed in on this, would we just submit from the departments their opinions referencing
Go
this?
to the city clerk's office with asking to put that under that CF number.
Correct. Any documentation that's submitted into the record can be submitted either by email, by fax, by U.S. mail, or in person, pardon me, at the city office of the city clerk. And at the particular moment, there is no council file yet for the budget, but once that council file is established, those documents, the neighborhood councils should also submit documents to the official budget file itself as well.
Okay, thank
The
you.
number that I just provided was the council file number for Councilmember Parks' motion relative to the neighborhood councils reporting on their participation in the budget regarding the city's budget challenges.
Thank you.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, on, what is it, on the budget is generally 0600,
Correct.
130600, and then there'll be 300 numbers after that.
All with the S in front of it.
Oh, yeah, I forgot the S, I'm sorry. Dash S. Okay. All right, but like I said, I think what you've accumulated so far, if you get that to the clerks under that CF number, we'll make sure that that becomes a part of the record.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's no other comments on item 1 and we only have 2 cards, we can now move to item 2. And our issue there primarily is to, under that CF number 13-0355, that any material that's come to done regarding the current budget be filed under that as a CF number. And as the process goes forward, we'll have probably a larger number for the budget itself. Okay, all right. We got to go to item 2.
Item number 2 is the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment report relative to the status of updating the roster for neighborhood councils on DUN's website and email distribution list with current information on all neighborhood councils and the status of establishing individual email accounts for each neighborhood council.
Pursuant to your request, council member, the updates that I've been providing for the past several months regarding our rosters and email database, I've basically put into this short report that just summarizes everything that we have done, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have on the report.
Let me just ask, so this task is completed.
It is completed. But except for one last aspect of it, which is the training that we were doing that training, and once we finish the training, we'll be taking the emails that we created for the neighborhood councils and working with the clerk so that they will have access to that referral memorandum of all the council files that are coming up so that they can sort through them themselves.
The only question I had on this is that where you mentioned that you'll provide to city elected officials and departments the access to neighborhood council Empower LA address. They can keep track of them. How and when will that occur?
We have already started distributing that information, so if you haven't gotten it, you probably will be getting it this week.
Okay. Now, is that going to give, you're going to give all 95 emails to each council office and department?
Right.
Are we going to come up with a little guidance that this is not a campaign strategy? I mean, this is not to be used other than for city business, and I would think it also would comply with what do we call them, the 199 letters or something. I just don't want us to get this system going, and then all of a sudden it gets inundated with stuff that people will find objectionable.
Yes, I know. I have similar concerns as well. So we have been trying to provide that information in a delicate manner. Yes, as we provide it.
Okay, because I think that would just make the whole system go under if people start misusing it.
I agree.
All right. So the key is that the training for the neighborhood councils, and then making departments and council officers aware of the 95 emails is the only thing left.
That's correct.
All right. So we'll receive and file this report, and then under this CF number, and move this as information to the council. Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Item number 3 is a verbal status report from the city attorney and Dunn, general manager, and board of neighborhood commissioners to report relative to recommendations for standardizing the factual basis stakeholder definition, qualifications, and documentation.
Council member, the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners have reviewed the results coming out of their committee, their standing committees about the factual basis stakeholder definition, and they have provided a motion regarding the factual basis stakeholder definition that they have put out to the neighborhood councils for feedback, and that will be open until May 20th, and at that point they will decide whether or not, or how, if they need to make any adjustments to the to their motion.
Let me just ask you one thing, and do we have the ability in the sense of requesting that not only the neighborhood councils have input, but that they agendize this issue, and we ask them to take an official position of what they believe should be factual based, where they believe it shouldn't be, whatever their official position, so that we'd have that on record?
We have asked them to do that. In the commission has asked them to do that as well. That's why they have until May 20th
Okay.
to respond.
If we should get it, if everybody, hopefully in the past it was like 30 or 40%, but if everybody complies, by that date we should get at least that cross-section of what people view about factual base.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, on this item, that we're going to instruct the Dunn and then request city attorney to work with this committee to review the bylaws and recommendations from standardizing the factual-based stakeholders. But we should do that after we get the input from the neighborhood councils.
Yes, they will be taking action on this in the May meeting, in their May meeting, which is a day before this ENN committee meeting.
So we'd have two things coming: the May meeting from the neighborhood councils taking their action, and then the commission with their subcommittees coming up with a. Now, is the commission going to wait for their input before they move forward?
The committees have already provided their information, so the neighborhood councils right now are just waiting for the neighborhood councils to provide further input.
All right, so we got two things coming, so we will agendize this item once you get access to those two items. Okay? So we'll move on that with that instruction.
Item number 4 is a verbal status report from the city attorney and Dunn, general manager, pursuant to motion of Weezer Parks relative to the current policy and potential policy changes whereby neighborhood councils might exercise their right under the neighborhood council system to petition the commission for a subdivision or to otherwise adjust their boundaries in order to increase and/or reduce their size for the purpose of better representation.
So currently, Councilmember, the Board of Neighbor Commissioners have not taken up this issue for final determination. It was on their agenda yesterday. However, the commissioners who are working with the plan review committees wanted to take this matter up collectively with all the other issues that they are looking at and provide one final report on the matter, which they expect will be completed when the plan review committees are done with their work at the end of May. And in June, at that point, the commission will be providing their feedback on this matter.
Okay. Let me just ask, is this issue prompted by redistricting, or is it prompted by what people think is a lack of efficiency of the existing neighbor councils? Is too large, too small, or adjoining areas not part of the system? What's driving that?
The city attorney may be able to weigh in on this because it historically has gone back quite a while, but this is something that was taken up by the Neighbor Council Review Commission prior to redistricting. And it is about existing neighbor councils that perhaps are too big. Some of them, if you're just looking at the residents of that area, and that's not even including the rest of the stakeholders, some of them are up towards like 95,000 people. So I think that some of those neighbor councils have been interested in subdividing and becoming smaller neighbor councils to become more effective in working with their population. So I don't know if City Attorney has more to add to that.
Deputy City Attorney Darren Martinez. No, I would concur with what Gracie has stated. You know, a lot of neighborhood councils, they have a desire to become smaller, and they believe that that will increase the efficiency in which they operate. One item that I do want to clarify or add to this, though, is this issue of subdivision, it would require a city council ordinance. So ultimately, the city council would have to decide as a policy matter what that process and procedure would be for neighborhood council subdivision.
Okay, but now, when they call it subdivision, are they speaking of maybe downsizing one and moving the remaining area to another? Or maybe they end up creating an additional neighborhood? So all those options are there.
Correct. One neighborhood council could become two distinct neighborhood councils. The difficulty under the current system is that process or procedure doesn't exist. One way for it to occur is the entire neighborhood council would have to be decertified, so there wouldn't be any neighborhood council at all in an area, and then two applicants would have to come forward again with the certification application for the area in which they wanted to get a certification.
There'd be no ability to do that without all that administration. I can see that restraining people if you decertified and started all over.
Correct, and that's why there has not been any, factually where one hasn't come back and become two. So there are a number of neighborhood councils that have expressed this desire to be able to just file this application, and then after this application is considered by the bonk, both of them basically a divorce, a subdivision, whatever you want to refer to it. The result from that is one certified neighborhood council now becomes two distinct neighborhood councils with their separate bylaws, with their separate boundaries.
So their intent is to try to get a simpler process.
Correct. Or to have any process at all, because there is no process right now to do that.
And that would also have to, they would also have to address the funding issue too. Do they split the existing funding, or does each neighbor council get a full funding separately?
I mean, you would be looking at maybe splitting the funding for the rest of that fiscal year, and then they start the following year with full.
It could be any of those. It could be immediate funding for prorated, or they split it.
One thing, if we go through that might aid all of us, is that if this becomes a reality, that we make all subdivisions or changes July 1st, which takes into the proration issue out of the ballpark,
Yeah, I wouldn't expect that we would have any subdivisions occurring before then, because we still would need the ordinance in place
No, I mean,
before.
in the future, whenever there's an ordinance, we should just make them all effective July 1st, so that we're not basically prorating money and going through all that,
That's a good recommendation, yes.
we can move forward. Okay. All right, any other issues on that item? So on this item, we have end of May, early June, we should have information back from the commission on this issue in the city attorney. And Dunn will look at the bylaws to come up with whatever language and dealing with that in the future for an ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes, we'll be working with the city attorney and the commission on that.
Okay. So we will hold this item and continue it, and we look back for a report back in our meeting in June. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have no other items. We have no comment cards, and so we are adjourned.